Hello and welcome to the Career Compass, the official podcast of Jarupa, a global search firm focused on hyper-personalized searches for disruptive tech companies. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Erik Schwarz, a seasoned technology executive, entrepreneur, and thought leader in the field of artificial intelligence. Erik, welcome to the show.
Aaron, good morning. Thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be here.
It's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure. And despite the wintry weather, I think we're kind of getting into the spirit of things. The holidays are close by, so it's a kind of a nice, relaxed feeling at this time of year. I don't know whether you've been on a Christmas party circuit yet, or hanging out with some customers in the festive sense already.
It's been quite a hectic social calendar, I'll have to admit, which has been quite nice because I think this December, having been in the UK now for about 5-6 years, this is the first December that I remember that it's been quite dreary. I'm looking forward to the candlelight and the firelight and a little holiday celebration to sort of ease the darkness that we're having outside.
That's right. That's right. And thank goodness for the idea of Christmas lights and decorations, right? It just kind of lifts the gloom a little bit at this time of year. So, for the benefit of our listeners and viewers that aren't familiar with who you are, Eric, you're the Chief AI Officer of Tricon Infotech, and you pioneer the integration of generative AI and large language models into search technologies. You create transformative solutions for knowledge discovery. So, I think in stepping back, you've got over 2 decades of experience. You've held senior roles at Comcast, Elsevier, Microsoft. And along the way, you've delivered groundbreaking innovations such as the Scopus AI project, large-scale recommendation systems, and a lot of your work is about helping small and medium businesses develop actionable AI strategies. So part of that is demystifying complex technologies, fostering impactful implementations. So if I had to summarize your approach and philosophy, I'd probably say you've been focused on collaboration, innovation, and redefining the way that we interact with information. So it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on. You mentioned you're speaking from London. You've been in the city for 6 years. Is that about right?
Yes, that's right. I've been in the UK for about 6 years now, coming over from the Washington, D.C. area in America.
Very nice. Very nice. So any plans to head back over the holidays, or are you pretty much
Not this year. I think
rooted
this year
here?
we'll have a nice low key holiday here in we're down by the seaside in Kent, so we'll enjoy the holidays here. A nice low key celebration. I think yeah, it'll but no plans to go back just yet.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it's great to have you here, and Kent is a good place to be, I would say, not far from the seaside, and a short hop into Europe if needed. So let's talk about the theme of today's episode. So the title is a little bit long and clunky. Maybe you could help me kind of rationalize that, but we've called it Harnessing the Power of AI, Insights from a Pioneer in Knowledge Discovery. So what we're looking to do is really explore your journey through the evolving AI landscape, the leadership you've had in deploying AI powered solutions, and really your vision for the future of technology. So we'll probably be touching on generative AI, how that's going to reshape industries. We'll talk about the ethical challenges of AI, of course, very hot topic, and strategies for making advanced technology more accessible to businesses of all sizes, I should say. So hoping for some interesting insights to come out of that in terms of what our listeners are kind of curious around. So could you maybe, as a starting point, tell us about your journey, Eric, from starting off in search and knowledge discovery all the way to becoming, chief AI officer? What were the pivotal moments in your career today?
Yeah, no, thanks, Aaron. No, I think it's important to explain the context of how I got here, and I like to explain that I feel like almost like the planets or the solar system and the sun. I feel like I've been staying still, and the universe of technology has been rotating around me. And so, to explain that a bit more, what I mean is that I started my career building digital libraries, and digital libraries was really one of the first foundational or fundamental digital transformation experiences that we had when we, dealing with climate change with the use of paper and printing journals and printing books and putting things online, and the real transformation that happened in the early 90s with the advent of the internet. What we started doing back in those days is we were taking these paper documents and digital documents and recognizing the characters using the technology called OCR, optical character recognition, to find words, find meaning inside of this text, which was imperfect at the day. It was, it was very rules based at the time. And so what we would do is the approach we would take is we would take this text and we put it into a search engine. And the search engine had a fuzzy logic component into it that allowed us to recover errors from the recognition. And so I've been at this nexus of information, converting information into digital form, and then converting people's questions and queries into digital form to get them to match, right? And that's the heart of what information technology is. You have someone has an intent, a question in their mind, and they have some content, an answer to that question that they want to connect. All throughout these years, people have wanted to understand, what is this content about? What is the sentiment? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it supportive? Is it desupportive? Does this answer? And really, they want to answer questions, right? And as I go through that journey, and through building digital platforms and knowledge discovery platforms, the questions haven't changed, but the ways, the tools that we have to answer those questions have fundamentally changed. And now we have these things called large language models that are really good at solving some of these problems. So we have a whole new set of tools in our toolkit that allow us to address these same challenges that people have had when looking for information and looking for answers. We didn't have the capability to take content and just summarize it and say, here's 20 results in a document corpus. What are these things really about? What are they talking about? What are the themes here? And how do we extract those things? And they were very computationally intensive processes. But now with AI, we can do it almost automatically. So that's sort of the journey and where I've been. Just to give a little bit more background too, before you jump to your next question, we talked a little bit about knowledge discovery platforms. And what I mean by a knowledge discovery platform, when I talk about that, is a platform that's effectively, it's a search engine that sits on top of people's or an enterprise's data. And it's used to power digital experiences. So at Comcast, for example, we built a knowledge platform that powered all of the video experiences. So every time someone sat down and watched a video or a television show, or just wanted to watch the news or sports on TV, they interacted with this large data platform that was a search engine and recommendation systems and an editorial platform behind the scenes that allowed them to get at exactly the show and content that they wanted to get at. Similarly, for Elsevier, we took all of the content that Elsevier has in its massive repository, over 25 million articles that Elsevier publishes. The Scopus, we talked a little bit about Scopus AI. Scopus is a repository of almost 90 million abstracts and indexes. And we built an AI layer on top of it to allow people to really deeply engage with that content in a really meaningful way. And so that I thought it was important to sort of understand what knowledge discovery is and where it sits. And then sort of how do we think about the AI layer on top of that, and how it really enables people to engage with that content in dramatically different ways than we'd ever anticipated.
We've come such a long way. It's unbelievable. I remember going back to about 1994, maybe 95, first PC, or maybe a friend had a PC. I think that was the first time we had a PC, and using things like CompuServe and AOL, or AOL, as some of my American friends like to call it at that time, and being amazed by going into a program like Encarta, which was from a CD-ROM, and watching these videos about major historical events like the blimp that exploded back in the 30s, President Kennedy's assassination, all these things, and you're kind of looking at these reasonably well represented videos, with some article alongside it explaining how it worked. But the process of kind of pulling out that information was a little bit clunky and a bit painful. It took a long time, particularly with dial-up internet as was. Then you kind of fast forward, say, 20 years, and you had some companies that were specializing in recommendation algorithms for companies that had content. If you like that movie, you'll like this movie. If you like that TV show, you should watch this TV show. So it's interesting how it's kind of burgeoned over the years and got a lot more slick and more refined. Your own work with LLMs and generative AI is pretty impressive, Erik. And I'm kind of curious to ask you, how do you envision these technologies transforming industries beyond tech? In terms of where we are today, those industries that are maybe a little bit more slow paced, so tech change resistant, perhaps. How do you see this evolving in the next 5 years?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think that's definitely very much the crystal ball question, right? And I think there's a good guess, but we're really moving at an incredibly fast pace. I mean, what we're seeing today, right, is we're seeing traditional information providers, right? These are publishers, these are media companies. What the technology is allowing them to do, and you talked a little bit about Encarta, right? What we did is we lifted up, right? Remember as a kid going through and having these big encyclopedias. You had a whole shelf of your house, maybe in your den. Some people, if you were lucky enough, you had them in your den, you had them in your house. Otherwise, you'd go to the library and there'd be shelves of encyclopedias there. And you can go and you get a little snapshot, right? And there were A, B, C, D, right? There's those volumes by alphabet, and that was on the shelf was all the information that you really needed. It was a snapshot of information. So that information, those encyclopedias, were then boiled down into a CD-ROM, right? So that I could put a single CD-ROM into my computer, and I could sort of engage with it. And now I can sit down and I can talk to my phone and say, "Hey Siri, tell me about the Hindenburg."
Mm.
Right? Tell me about the
Yeah.
Battle of Berlin. Tell me about some historical event. And so what we've done is we've enabled the computer to now lift and create new modalities around this existing content. And by modalities, what I mean is that instead of it just being text that I have to read on screen, it can become a video, it can become an audio, it can become a podcast, right? We can create these new modalities. And so what we're doing today with customers, for example, is traditional textbook publishers, for example, that have maybe these are maybe university textbooks in deep thought provoking subjects, maybe like psychology,
Academic stuff.
biology, or accounting, and these can be really hard concepts to wrap your brain around for students. And so what we're able to do today with the technology is the students sitting there on an online reader, reading a paragraph or reading some information in a textbook, and they can simply click into a paragraph and pull it up and say, "Can you explain this to me differently? Can you give me a story? Help me understand what this
Imagine I
means?"
was
You
10
put this,
years old, like with your daughter, or your son. Like, how do you explain this concept of, Keynesian economics to a 10-year-old? There you go. It's fantastic. Unbelievable.
right, right. So the AI can come back and say, "Explain it to me like a 10-year-old. Explain it to me. Tell it to me like it's told me like a pirate. Sing me a song like a superhero, right?" So anything that sort of really makes it lifts up, it makes it metaphorically three-dimensional. It creates some depth around this content and makes it more interactive, so that people with different learning styles can then wrap their brains around it. People can I use the word context a lot, but we have, as humans, we have context, right? We've created some context for this audience by simply saying, "Hey, I'm Aaron. Here's the podcast I work for. Here's the organization I work for. Here's Erik. Here's what he does." So we've created a little bit of context for our audience, right? And humans are pretty good at taking that context and then being able to build a mental narrative about what that means. Well, we're doing that same thing with the computers and the AI. We're creating a background story, right, that helps understand who we are as individuals, who we are as people, to help explain these concepts, the complicated concepts. So, for example, just the other day, there was this announcement that came out from Google about, I don't know if you saw it, Aaron. It was about this new quantum computing chip, and we've been talking about quantum computing since the 40s and 50s and sci-fi and this whole notion of Einstein and quantum entanglement and these various states. And Google came out and said, "Hey, we made a breakthrough. This is fantastic." And so I went down to ChatGPT. I'm not a quantum physicist, and I don't play one on TV either. But I went to ChatGPT, one of the popular AI LLM chatbots that's online, and I said, "What does this mean? Help me understand what this
Yeah.
breakthrough means,
Visualize this
right?"
one.
Because
Yeah.
people kind of look at it and it's like, "Oh my God, there's a quantum computing breakthrough. Suddenly all of our cryptocurrency algorithms are going to be gone and people are going to break into a bank account and steal all my money," right? It's like, hold on a second. We really have to understand what this means and how do we relate to these technologies.
No, you do, and everyone has different learning styles. Even the most complex theories and rationales. It's just about finding the right key to unlock that person's comprehension. Some people prefer to be kinetic, to touch things with their hands, learn by doing. Some people prefer visual. Some people prefer oral listening. But I think it raises, without going off into a tangent, it does raise an interesting point about education and the possibilities of that. You're probably going to find people are split into two camps about, well, the traditional education system. Those that were kind of against it and feel it isn't fit for purpose anymore will be even more encouraged by that. Well, do we need to have the school system? Yeah, let's keep the interpersonal interaction. But this is a whole new way to learn and take in information, and others will kind of feel, this is a disaster. It's replacing everything we know. And I think it really does open up an interesting debate about the way we learn and assimilate information, learn context. Really is kind of an exciting time.
And I think these are the debates that we need to have, right? Because there's certain benefits of these traditional institutions, but there are also certain shortcomings. And I think the challenge that these institutions had, whether they be parochial school or elementary school or secondary schools that we've used to bring up they really take because they have to scale. They have to take a one size fits all approach towards education, right? They put together a curriculum, they put together a set of learning objectives, they put together, and very often because of, classrooms are more and more crowded, the fundings are going down, they're not keeping up with the needs of the students, they're not keeping up with the technology in the classrooms. There's a lot of haves and have-nots as you look at different schools and different school systems, private, public, and across different regions. But this notion of one size fits all is a real challenge because these educators need to scale and need to reach their message. But as you accurately pointed out, students, every person has a different learning style. We talk about this you think about the bell curve of where the majority of people sit. And we talk about neurodiversity, right? People that sort of live towards the edge. Maybe there's things like autism, which are diseases that we still don't really understand the drivers for it or the rises for it. But with different neural symptoms, neural behaviors that different people have. And we talk about them at the spectrum of the sort of bell curve of where people are. But the reality is we start to engage more and more with people around education and learning and changing information, that area of neurocentricity where everyone is the same is actually much, much smaller than we think. We're all diverse across this broader spectrum. So the AI now, just like your firm allows for hyper-personalization, AI now can allow for hyper-personalization of education materials and allow people to engage with something as deeply or not. And I mean, the real thing that I think we want in our students and our children and the upcoming generations of classes, just this knowledge or this curiosity, the sense of wanting to learn and wanting to understand and wanting to solve real problems, not just being I'm right and you're wrong.
Absolutely, and that's a big problem we have right now. We're in such a polarized society, across the world, different governments, different societies, very, very polarized, and it's very much, I think, I'm right, you're wrong. But it raises an interesting point in the sense that I think of my son. We were having a debate the other day. He's 15, nearly 16, doing all these kind of preparation exams, mock exams. And he kind of said something along the lines of, I want to drop this particular subject because I'm never going to climb a mountain. I'm not going to be a geologist. I don't need to know about these rocks. And you kind of think, well, kind of got a point. And why not just focus on the things that you're passionate about, that you're really interested in, and maximize your potential that way, rather than maybe kind of spreading yourself over a number of, maybe a controversial opinion. But, I think this is another use case to say, well, in the future, our education program could be a little bit like how a scholarship has worked in the past. This kid's got a great talent or great potential in this particular niche field. Let's really push them in that direction and invest in them, enable them to go to the best schools, best universities, whatever. Is that a possibility for AI to enable that path, for kids with different learning styles, different passions? It probably is.
You asked the question about what do I think is going to happen in the next 5 years, and I think this is front and center of one of the key opportunities for us. Furthermore, right, if you go back and think about when you exited university and you took your first job, right, took your first employment, were you prepared for that job? Did you have any idea what to expect, right? And then you get into that job, to the point, right? You get into that first job, and someone's like, okay, here's your first job. I'm going to pay you X, Y, Z, and here's the task I need you to do. And you're like, well, I learned all this stuff about biology and chemistry and maths and sciences, and like I learned all these topics. And my first job was, I was working at the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington D.C., supporting researchers on, it was a campus, it was a laboratory facility, a large campus facility, and we were supporting Macintosh access to the library information resources from those. And so my job was effectively making sure that these researchers could hook their Mac up to the network and talk to the library, right? That was my job.
Right.
And that was what they paid me to do. And I was like, well, this is crazy. I did all these years of study, right? So I could walk around with a floppy disk and a paperclip to help people.
Now you're going back with floppy disk.
But to the point, I mean, so a little bit tongue in cheek with that comment, because I think, that I think the point of that education system was to create a generalized set of knowledge. So we had we had an exposure, and then we could decide where we wanted to go. But if we could identify earlier and help people or help students really drive into their passions, I mean, you see some of these innovations that come out are people that find their passion, they find their drive, 16, 18, 20 years old, and they take a pivot, and sometimes they create the most important inventions of our time in society, right?
The biggest problems. Yeah. Exactly.
So they were able to figure out how to take that step, but a lot of people still don't know how to take that step. So I think there's a real opportunity there if we can create some sort of vocational exposure, but also creating that notion of getting people ready, getting people to ready to participate in society and the workforce and whatever the workforce ends up looking like in the next 4 or 5 years, which I think is going to also dramatically, I mean, since COVID, it's dramatically changed, right? You and I would do this from a conference room. 5 years ago, we would do this from a conference. We would sit down, we'd get together someplace in London, and we sit down in a conference room and we record this. Now we're like, well, why wouldn't we do this online from our home offices, right?
You'd be sitting on the ship in the ocean. You could be at the top of a mountain drinking coffee, right? And we could, provided we've got the connection, it's possible from anywhere. So
And I'm sitting
huge
on a
kind of
Starlink. So
changes.
I really take my Starlink and go anywhere in the world.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's another kind of fairly recent development that just opens up so many frontiers. You mentioned obviously at Tricon, you're using AI to drive business outcomes in general. When you're going out talking to prospective customers, people that are kind of expressing interest, what challenges do you face in making those technologies more accessible, more adoptable? What barriers do you face, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think it's one that a lot of organizations are really trying to wrap their heads around the past couple of years. Rolling back in time, and you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, back in the early '90s, right when the internet first showed up, and personal computers were starting to show up, and we started having our own, laptop, desktop computers. You have Bill Gates out there saying, "Just give me a computer on every desktop." I was like, "Yeah, you're right. Forget it. That'll never happen." Right now, I'm looking right now at you, and I'm like, I've got 3 computers in front of me.
Exactly. Devices everywhere.
Devices everywhere, screens and devices everywhere. And so but if you look at that, just the point I'm making there is that if you look at the evolution when the internet showed up to when we sort of really had the first set of products and commercial products, it was a period of about 5 or 7 years, right? So the internet showed up, we had Yahoo, we had these kind of cool directories, people were putting information up there, but we weren't really doing commerce on the internet, like buying things, using our credit cards, right, to buy things over the internet for a good 5 or 7 years. It wasn't until the late '90s that people were like, okay, yeah, maybe I can, buy a book, right? Amazon started coming on the scenes, and
It was a bookstore
right,
originally. Yeah.
eBay started to come on the scenes. You're like, okay, maybe I can actually start to trust these things as secure enough. So it took about a period of a good. So ChatGPT came out 2 years ago, right? We talked a little about ChatGPT. It's been 2 years since it came out, and so we've seen an extraordinary amount of progress in just the last 2 years with organizations. So some of the barriers that you run into, the tide's starting to change a bit, right? You have a lot of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out in the C-suite and in the boardroom. And executives, they come in and they don't really understand. Most executives, I'm speaking generally here, most executives and most C-suite don't really understand what the technology is, what it does, and what it can and can't do. Just as important, what it can do is what it can't do. And so they say, shit, we've got to get our AI strategy. Hey, Mr. CTO, hey, technical guys, figure out where this thing fits. We can't not have AI in our organization. And so that creates a bunch of fear. And so that's what we see, the patterns that we see is that technology organizations will spin up a proof of concept. And it's actually pretty easy compared to some of the other like SaaS services and .com technologies we've seen over the years, client server technologies, various APIs and various services that we've been integrating with our systems over the past years. It's pretty easy to actually stand up and get a system working with AI. In fact, we've got AI tools that can make AI to talk to AI, right? And a little bit of a circular loop there. So it's pretty easy to stand up a proof of concept, but these things then were created, these proof of concepts or POCs were created in isolation from the actual business needs. And so you end up having these POCs. Now we're getting this. I was just talking to Gartner, the big analyst firm, a couple days earlier in the week. And one of the analysts said, yeah, we're clearly in the trough of disillusionment. We've got all the peak of expectations come through. We're now falling squarely into the trough of disillusionment because we put all this investment in these proof of concepts and they're not getting out to production. They're not having an impact. So now we've gone from the fear of I'm not doing this quick enough to we've done it and it doesn't help our business, right? So
It doesn't get us where we want to. That's the perception.
We spent a lot of money on this and didn't solve a problem for us. So one of the biggest things that we're still seeing out there is what I'm calling AI literacy, right? It's just a fundamental understanding from the top down to the bottom of the organization and from the bottom of the organization up. What does this thing do? How does it fit, right? And so some organizations I was talking to was at a roundtable earlier this week, sitting next to someone who runs an innovation office in a large bank that we've all heard of. And they said, listen, we ran a Copilot test. We kind of dialed it back. We gave it out. We have 300 seats. We have like an entry level version of it. We gave it to a bunch of people, and everyone's sort of underwhelmed, right? So you've got these tools. People are shoving the tools right into these people's workflows, and so those are strategies that are just they're not working. On the other hand, like we're seeing some other stories now where people are creating strategies. I've talked to another firm at a conference the week before where the CEO came and said, "Listen, I'm going to put aside a chunk of our budget, and we're going to create some tools, right, that are safe, they're sanctioned, they're approved, and we're going to make them available for people to use, and we're going to give them some time to play with these tools. Just like it's not part of your work. We're not going to shove it into your workflow. We're not going to change your job. We're going to say we're going to create these tools. They're approved. They're free to use, and please try them and see what you can do with them." This woman who had a senior product role in this organization said that they've seen a 33% uptake in the use of these tools as people just start to say, well, "This is pretty cool. I can figure how I can apply it to this problem." Right? It's like so dumping a set of Legos on the table, right? What happens
Yeah,
when you drop a
go and
set of
figure it
Legos
out.
on a table? The kids all come around and they start putting stuff together. Some will put them by the same color. Some will put the square ones together. Some create crazy shapes. Some people will make cars, right? But what they do with it is up to them because we've given them a set of tools that they can play with. The other example that I'll share with you, which is a similar strategy that another organization took, is they sat down with their C-suite and said, "Listen, we're going to give you a very precise training. We're going to give you a really hard task. Right? This is something every quarter we put out or every year we put out our annual report. Every quarter we put out a quarterly report because we're obligated because of financial regulations. I'm going to give you the spreadsheet with all the data in it, and you're going to have 2 hours and this AI tool, and you have to produce this report." So they gave these executives a really hard task, impossible task. And this is something they would have teams of accountants and writers and communication experts spent 3 or 4 weeks, spending, in 2 hours, these guys were able to understand what they could do with the tool set. And so this drove an education into that C-suite that then permeated throughout the organization. So this is what I mean about AI literacy. And I think getting our heads around what the tools can do, what they can't do, and how they fit is the key thing. And so just to round this point off, to answer your question, when we sit down and engage with clients, the very first thing that we do is we say, "That's wonderful, Mr. CTO or Mr. CEO or Mrs. CMO who wants to integrate AI into your product. I think that's super exciting. AI is great. It provides a lot of capabilities, a lot of things we're still figuring out. But let's step back. Let's really understand the business problem that you want to solve. What is the number one business problem that you want to solve? And let's take that head on. Right? And then let's find the right set of tools that allow you to solve that problem. Second, let's go look inside your business to find these really manual, labor-intensive, highly repetitive tasks, right? Those are the low-hanging fruit that you can sort of pick off as an organization to address with AI."
Absolutely. And that should be, I think, as you say, going back to the basic business problems that you're trying to solve, that should be the North Star. That should always be the guiding point. What are we trying to solve? What's going to be the ROI here? What do we want it to look like after you've worked the magic? And I think as well as that, the point about low-hanging fruit, absolutely, because that's where you get the proof of concept very quickly. You've kind of shown how you've automated that 40-point flow chart into pressing one button and getting the same outcome. Wow, this is mind-blowing. That's absolutely the thing to aim for. If we go back to your roles at Elsevier and Comcast, I'm kind of curious to ask about what strategies you deployed to deliver scalable AI solutions like Scopus AI so quickly, because they seem to happen very, very fast. Was it having the clout of a large company name behind you, a certain degree of trust and recognition there, or was there a kind of a different approach that you took in terms of?
It's a great question. The Elsevier story was quite interesting, to be honest with you. Round about the time that ChatGPT. So I had people on my team that we've been dabbling in the space for quite some time. So we had data scientists on our team. We worked very closely with our larger data science organization. We were using machine learning and recommendation systems to do predictive analytics, to affect search algorithms, to really sort of understand what people were doing and people were learning about. And so we sat down, we stepped back with the organization and said, we created this vision around what the future of knowledge discovery was. And it was this really sort of future-looking vision where we talked about this notion of interactivity. We talked about this notion of multimodalities. We talked about this notion of just conversational experiences. And so my team, excuse me, my team started to invest in these technologies deeply. We started looking into content embeddings, right, which is really effectively taking a set of content and saving it and putting it into it's an oversimplification, but it's effectively we take this content, we put it into a large scale matrix, and then we can use math, just simple matrix math, to compare and to see how similar these things are to each other or how different they are. And so we started investing in what was called vector search, and there's a whole category of products that came out called vector databases for putting your content in these vectors and storing it there and pulling it out and doing this combinatorial mathematics. And so we started making investments there, started doing experiments with different embedding models, and then a perfect storm hit. The broader organization, the parent company of RELX, they went off and had an offsite, and one of the sister companies showed a proof of concept of what they built. They said, listen, we're taking our product, we're putting AI into it, we're making a big investment here, we're going to make this a really interactive, competitive tool. Here's how we're going to price it, here's how we're going to go to market with it. And all the other CEOs from the sister company said, oh, we've got to go back and figure out how we do this. And so we went around the organization, and everyone, we very sort of, the way innovation happens in large corporations, right? It's very it's very spread out. People are everyone's expected to innovate in their day jobs, but we also have commitments that people have made around what they did to deliver quarter over quarter to drive business value and capture business value. And I raised my hand. I said, we've got your solution right here, right? So give us a couple days. And so I had one of the guys on my team. He said, listen, I'm going to cancel all my meetings. I'm going to put together a prototype to kind of put these pieces together. So we sat down literally with ChatGPT as an AI, put together this high level prototype and built effectively what people are today calling RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. And we put a prototype together, we put a working prototype together, we put a few documents in there because we had all these pieces already kind of there. We'd done all the groundwork. We put this UI layer in front of it and put a couple of features in front of it, made a small 2-3 minute video, and we surfaced that around the organization, and it just took off like wildfire. People said, yes, that's the thing we want. We don't know what that is, but that's the thing what we want to do. And it was, we built this system sort of on our own organically. And I remember coming into the team one day and saying, hey guys, what we built, everyone on the internet's calling RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, but we effectively had built it organically. And so it was bringing these pieces together, understanding that the customer problem, and then putting it together into a way that was really consumable for our executives. Is even as part of that little proof of concept, that little demonstration, we put a little feature in there to explain to me as a 5-year-old. And one of the things that sort of resonated that this tool drove for the first time is that we got our executives to sit down and admit that that when they were dealing with this really kind of dense academic literature, that not a lot of people really understood what it was about. Because if you think about it, it's academic literature is written, right, to help researchers move and professors and academics move through their career. So it's really about a stamp that I did this at a certain point of time with these colleagues. We achieved this accomplishment, but the language is written for that domain. Like chemists write for chemists, and physicists write for physicists, and people that are outside of that aren't deeply into that knowledge domain. It's almost its own language, right? If you think about it. And even the people inside the business didn't understand that language. And so what the AI enabled us to do was enabled us to understand what the content was, enabled people from multiple disciplines ask questions across these disciplines that they were, these are seasoned academics. It was embarrassing for them to come off and admit that they didn't really, as a physicist, I couldn't understand.
Really kind of makes sense.
Doing, right? So now we have we created this common playing field, where these multidisciplines could get together, find out information, ask fundamental questions about how things work, to then really go focus on these cross-disciplinary problems like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, things like climate change and hunger and poverty. And these are cross-disciplinary problems that really need brains from multiple areas to come together. And that's what we enabled to do. So we put that prototype together, we shared that across the organization. It went viral. It was a 2-minute video that went throughout the organization, all the way up and down the executive tree, and we identified. And so that was how it happened. But to be fair, we'd done all our homework. We'd laid out all the groundwork. We'd had all the pieces in place. We knew exactly what we wanted to build. We just needed that spark to create recognition, and that's what brought it forward.
Excellent. And I understand a big part of the recipe for success is collaboration. So it's fostering that culture of innovation and trust, not just within your team, but across the organization. Would you agree collaboration is a key recipe in that formula?
Collaboration, it's really about making sure that everyone's voice is heard. And I think that's what AI can really do for us in a lot of ways. We can reinvent our product teams to bring in the voice of not just the product manager and the engineering people and the designer, but the communication people. In this case, we'd spent a lot of time working with editors. These are editors of the 2,700 journals that Elsevier publishes, and showing them what this tool can do. And they said, God, this fundamentally changes my workflow. And so we started to enable the voice and interaction of all these different disciplines inside the organization. And by bringing that collaboration together, everyone feeling ownership, right, around this solution, right, that so this can affect me, and this really helps me in a meaningful way, more than I've ever seen. That's helps drive things forward, helps drive success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a key component. So let's talk about the broader impact of AI, looking forward again. We often use the horizon 3 to 5 years, but I suspect we'll be doing things in that time frame we're not even discussing right now. It's entirely possible. But a big part of your role, I guess, as a chief AI officer is to help the small and medium businesses develop AI strategies. So what kind of trends or opportunities do you see for smaller companies in terms of leveraging AI effectively? And is this the great leveler in your view?
I think that's a great way to frame it up. I just put a blog post up on LinkedIn a week or so ago, exactly to those views. And I think large companies, they have a lot of inertia. Large companies have a lot of scale, they have a lot of reach. But suddenly small companies can now compete in very hyper niche areas by enabling their workforce. I was speaking to the head of a recruitment agency a few weeks back, and he was saying, "Listen, Eric, I'm trying to wrap my head around how I use AI." And I said, you know, I could potentially use it for cutting back my costs. Right? I said, listen, you have two options, right? You could either, you have a workforce of about 70 people, small company. You could either say, listen, I'm going to take this operation of 70 people. I'm going to really get it all done with 20 people, right? So that's one option. Or I said, you can flip it around the other way and say, listen, if you can enable your team, really educate them how they can use these tools, how it can help propel them and really augment the skills that they already have, your team of 70 now can compete with a company of 500, right? And think about how that's so you flip the tables and think about how you've got this great team that you've established and how you can use them and to create superpowers to compete at a different level. Suddenly it creates brand new opportunities for these small businesses that are deeply into their domains.
And the capabilities in terms of augmentation are just kind of limitless, really, right? In terms of some of the consulting work we do outside of the searches, advisory stuff, guidance, we figured things out in terms of training the model that are just, they're kind of not just saving time, but they're also creating new horizons in terms of value add and different angles to consider and, different nuances. You're familiar with the concept of temperature gauges in terms of creativity, right? So there's certain things on that field that are pretty exciting from our perspective. Let's talk a little bit about the ethical considerations, because this is something that's cropping up quite frequently. There's discussion around that point. So from your perspective, what are your thoughts on the ethical considerations surrounding generative AI? Particularly if you talk about areas like data privacy and bias in AI systems. Where do you stand?
Well, I think these are big. These are very big, thorny questions that we have to take on as collaboratively. I think first and foremost, the AI systems that we're using today have been primarily trained with very westernized data. And so I think it's important to understand that. So we see examples in medical, even in literature and in writing, where styles that will be sort of echoed out by the AI align very much to sort of Western ideologies and Western thoughts. So I think first and foremost, we have to be cognizant of the data sets that are there. I think there are some efforts that are going on to be more inclusive in the sets of data that we bring into it. But it's also important as we think about going forward and building these systems that we take a really responsible approach towards how we use AI. First and foremost, right? It's there's a lot of fear that people are going to lose their jobs, and I think we have to take this on and say, listen, we're not here to replace your job, but we're here to provide you tools to help you to get rid of some of these repetitive tasks. I think we have to think about. We also have to think about how we keep the human in the loop, right? So we're not, we're not going to hand this task off to AI. We're going to work with the AI as a partner, as an assistant, to come and help us accelerate what we're doing, so humans can now come and add intelligent value on top of what the output is there versus it replacing that.
Yeah,
I think
I think that's the point. It's the EQ equation, the prism, looking through the prism or the lens of a human, making that kind of final judgment and decision is still a crucial component.
it's still a crucial component. And I think if we take a very human-centric approach, right, we take a very empathetic approach towards how we introduce these tools into our organizations. We think about the problems that we want to solve. Again, coming back to the point we made earlier, the problems we can solve, that the AI can solve, the problems that it can't solve, and we don't try to solve those because it's going to make up information by design, right? It's a probabilistic system, right? You give it a set of inputs, it's going to give you a set of outputs based on a set of probability, based on what it learned. We can tune that, we can tailor that, we can adjust that based on a whole bunch of different parameters and knobs and switches we can switch. But in the back of your head, it's just going to echo back only things that it's heard before. So if we understand that fundamentally, right, it's not trying to break itself out of your computer yet. It's just echoing back things that's heard. If we understand what's happening behind the scenes, and then figure out how that can augment and help us, we can channel it into useful use cases.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And looking ahead again, without any particular timescale, what excites you most about the future of AI and knowledge discovery? Are there any emerging areas that you believe are as yet unexplored?
So I think there are. I think what's exciting me the most, and anyone that follows me on LinkedIn, which I invite all of you to do after the podcast, of course, is that I'm very excited about agents and agent behavior. Agent behavior is this whole notion of an AI that can run semi-autonomously, that focuses on a goal and can go off and sort of interact with various tools and take various actions on these tools on my behalf. You can think about the last time that you went off and booked a holiday, right? It's getting all those details down, right? Not only just the flights and the hotels and the transports and like just sort of the logistics of it, right? Then also you're on holiday. What should I do to optimize my time? What are the things? So you can imagine you can have an assistant, right? That works as an agent. That's your travel concierge, right? It knows what you like. It knows what foods you like. It knows that people in your party have like a peanut allergy, for example, right? And it can guide you every step of the way along that journey. How often you're driving to the airport to go to your flight? You're like, okay, what terminal do I have to go to? And it's just not there.
So many questions.
So many questions, right? And so like these agents can be these helpful assistants that can help you along the journey. Think about organizing a meeting, right? Who needs to be involved in a meeting? How do we schedule it? How do I adjust calendars? How do I adjust my own diary so that I can so I can create this work block? I want to do a workshop with a group of people. How do I adjust my own calendar? These are, they're tedious problems. They're solvable and humans can do them. But I could give this to an AI and it could solve this for me. It can negotiate these things on my behalf. So I'm very excited about agents as the next step in technology and what's going to come next year. We're seeing a lot of investment and a lot of maturing of these technologies. The announcements are coming out almost daily now from sort of the big AI vendors around agentic behavior and automation and intelligent automation. And we're going to watch this space very closely. The other thing that we're going to see as well is that, we talked a little bit about crypto and cryptocurrency, but the whole notion that crypto is built on, this whole notion of a blockchain and decentralized processing, that's going to come back in a big way. And there's going to be a really interesting intersection between AI, autonomous agent AI, and decentralized processes and protocols. Not necessarily in the cryptocurrency is one use case. You can think about, and we're going to explore this. It's worth exploring in a little bit more detail at some point in the future. But you can think about like education. You can think about ownership. You can think about creation, content creation. All these things can intersect very closely with how do I claim like copyright, for example, if I'm an author, right? How do I put something out there? Well, these decentralized technologies are very good at saying, yep, I created this thing, I put it out there, I shared it with the world. Here's my stamp on it. And people can be free to use it or even pay me for the use of the content that I created. But how do I get credit for it? And we create these very complex identity systems right now around our banking systems and around our credit cards and know what KYC and validating that I am human. Well, these decentralized systems plus AI and agents actually can solve a lot of these problems for us without having to create all this this friction in the user experiences that we create today. And then the third
Absolutely.
thing that's coming, that's a couple years out, and we alluded to it a little bit earlier, is that quantum will come. And so if I take AI plus decentralized technologies plus quantum computing, this is where we're going to actually see a fundamental change in society. It's because now we take the AI, this technology that's learning and can take care of a lot of automation for us. We take care of decentralization, which helps with identity and sharing things and ownership and making sure there's equity shared between creators and consumers. And then quantum, which then dramatically accelerates our computing processing power by orders of magnitude that we can't even count. The numbers are so big, millions and millions of times faster. That's when we see and literally we're probably within 10 years we'll see these things come together.
I fully believe it. It's incredible, really. Going back briefly to education, we talked obviously about the impact of AI on the capabilities of how people will learn in the future and assimilate knowledge. From your perspective, if you were giving advice to young professionals who are aspiring to lead in AI and technology innovation, what would you kind of guide them towards? What would be your starting advice to someone at the beginning of the career?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. I get that question a lot. People will raise their hand and say, Eric, how do I get started? And so first and foremost, get familiar with the tools. Understand what's out there. If you don't already, sit down, use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Llama, any one of these tools, sit down and start to figure out how it works with you. Figure out what you can do with it. Figure out what your passions lie. Use it as a as a pal, as an assistant, as a champion, someone that can really challenge you, someone you can debate with. You can use it for strategy. There's all kinds of things you can start to use those tools with today. So then the next thing that you need to do is that we're getting to the place where it's easier and easier and easier to build digital properties, digital experiences. Start building. Start assembling these pieces. Start using these tools and start putting things out there and sharing them with people. And don't be afraid if it's not good or if it's not, if it's someone, but just get it out there, go through the process, learn how to do it, and put these tools out there. And that's how I get started. Be curious, right? There's no dumb questions, right? If you have a question, you're not the only one in the room that has a question. You can go to your AI and you can ask those questions, but learn how to put these pieces together so that you now can create experiences. Whether you're passionate about writing or telling stories or making movies or building games or any experiences. These things are now more and more accessible, and the tools are going to show up. It's just a matter of weeks or months before they get better and better. OpenAI just put out the Sora tool. Now I can go with a few words and I can create 10-second videos, right? And so, like, this whole notion of being able to tell stories and with AI and videos is now going to be highly accessible. So that's my advice. Get your hands dirty, roll your sleeves up, get into the tools, figure out where your passions lie, and really explore them deeply.
Just get the content out there, start experimenting, start learning, and stay ahead of the curve, right? That's the big, way to hedge your bets against the future. If you're feeling a little bit concerned about the future and looking at a transition, just keep learning, keep ahead, right? That's
I would
very,
say
very big.
stay on the wave, because I think if we say stay ahead of the curve, that gets a little bit of, for me, just a nitpick a little bit. That makes you feel like you're falling behind, right? But there's just so much going on out there that you just have to stay curious and communicate with people, right? Just stay involved.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. That's fantastic. Erik, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's been a fantastic conversation, full of insight, some fantastic knowledge that you shared. So thank you for being so generous with your time. Much appreciated. This video will obviously go onto our YouTube channel, on our website. We'll kind of post it out through LinkedIn. So if anyone would like to get in touch with Erik, I presume you're happy for us to share your contact details, Erik. Feel free to reach out. And he is the man. And obviously, if you want to talk to us as well, please feel free. Until the next time, thank you for tuning in. And Erik, take care and all the very best for now.
Aaron, my absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Everyone, if you have questions, as Aaron said, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll talk again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks a million. Have a great day.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.